Tonight on NewsWatch, peace in the Middle East. The U.S. wants to help get talks started again, but is the timing right?
Plus, the royal baby, the fascination and importance of the birth of Will and Kate's little boy.
And the days of Elisha, a significant archaeological find, could actually show us what things were like in his day. All this and more tonight on NewsWatch. Good evening, everyone. I'm George Thomas.
And I'm Lori Johnson.
Secretary of State John Kerry says Israel and the Palestinians will start talking again soon. They'll discuss a possible Palestinian state and the key question of whether or not Jerusalem should be divided. John Wagi has more in our top story tonight.
It's been 5 years since Israel and the Palestinians held official negotiations. Now a new Secretary of State wants to bring the two sides back together.
The representatives of two proud people today have decided that the difficult road ahead is worth traveling.
It's unclear how John Kerry pulled off the deal or what is in the details.
Maybe there has been certain American promises made to the Palestinians. It could be financial, it could be political, diplomatic, and possibly there was pressure levied at Israel.
The bigger challenge, problems before any talking begins. The Palestinians aren't exactly united. Hamas, the terrorist organization controlling the Gaza Strip, rejected the talks outright, and Palestinian Authority officials in Ramallah say it's not yet a done deal. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also has conditions. He hopes to prevent a one-state solution that would include making millions of Palestinians Israeli citizens and prevent the establishment of another Iran-sponsored terror state. He also plans to let Israelis vote on any final deal. Both sides are skeptical.
Abu Mazen seems so reluctant to resume the negotiation and so reluctant or maybe unwilling to make the necessary concessions on the Palestinian side.
The pressure from the Americans is mainly on the Palestinians to accept American mediation and to accept Israeli conditions.
The Palestinians demand Israel stop building in biblical Judea and Samaria and release more than 80 convicted Palestinian terrorists before the talks even start. It's also clear that dividing Jerusalem will be on their agenda, a deal breaker for Israel.
During the last 100 years of the Israeli-Arab conflict, which precedes Israel's establishment, there has been ample evidence that the conflict has been over the existence rather than the size of Israel.
Israeli diplomat Yoram Ettinger says the U.S. hasn't learned from past mistakes.
The other issue, which is mind-boggling, is for the U.S. to be preoccupied right now with the Palestinian issue while the Middle East is burning.
According to Kerry, the talks could begin in Washington this week, but how long they'll last and where they'll lead remains to be seen. John Wagi, CBN News.
Iran is criticizing the European Union's decision to label the military wing of Hezbollah as a terrorist group. Iran backs Hezbollah financially and with weapons and training. The Iranian government called the move strange and uncalculated, but the White House applauded the EU's decision. In the past, the EU would always deny Israel's request to blacklist Hezbollah because of its part in the Lebanese government. But that changed after Hezbollah was accused of a terrorist attack against Israeli tourists in Bulgaria last year.
Now to Brazil, where there are growing concerns for the Pope's security. Protesters upset over the cost of his visit clashed with riot police using tear gas, water cannon and stun grenades hours after he landed. The highlight of the Pope's visit overseas trip comes Thursday when he'll gather with nearly 2 million people from around the world in Rio for the opening of the World Youth Day Festival. Here at home, the president is suffering his lowest job approval numbers in nearly 2 years. A McClatchy Marist poll puts Mr. Obama's job performance at 41%, sharply down from the 50% he got back in April. Republicans in Congress didn't do too well either. Their numbers sank to a low 22%, and only 1/3 of registered voters approved of the Democrats' performance. The lackluster economy, overseas turmoil, and numerous scandals swirling around the White House have all contributed to the president's low numbers.
Could American pastors be charged with hate speech for speaking out on their convictions? That's the warning from one up-and-coming superstar in the GOP. For more on that, we turn now to our chief political correspondent, David Brody. David, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Lori.
Well, David, we'll get to Senator Ted Cruz's remarks in just a second. But first, tell us about this event that you just covered. It was all about getting pastors to speak out and use their pulpits as a platform. Talk about that.
Well, that's right. About 800 pastors or so in Iowa, Des Moines, Iowa, to be exact, inside the Marriott for 2 days, all expenses paid by this group called the Iowa Renewal Project. And basically, their goal is to get pastors to speak out more on the issues of the day from the pulpit. And, you know, really, in this country, that hasn't been happening as much lately, especially because of all of this nonprofit 501c3 issues. In other words, churches, of course, are tax exempt. And if you're tax exempt, there are a lot of pastors that are concerned that if they speak out from the pulpit, they will be, in essence, a target of the IRS. And so this conference was like, look, you need to speak your mind, and we need spiritual renewal in America.
Well, you mentioned this event was held in Iowa. Why is that important?
Well, let me think. Oh, look, a primary calendar. And Iowa's first there on the docket. You know, Iowa, always very important politically. It is where many candidates like Rick Santorum and Mike Huckabee get their start presidentially. And folks like Ted Cruz and Rand Paul were there on hand to speak to these pastors because they are indeed thinking about running for office in 2016. So this was a place to start in South Carolina and not New Hampshire, excuse me, but South Carolina for sure will have one of these as well.
Well, Senator Ted Cruz spoke at this event, but you also sat down for an exclusive interview with him. And one thing he said is shifting away from traditional marriage could pose bigger problems for pastors down the road. Let's listen to what he said.
If you look at other nations that have gone down the road towards gay marriage, that's the next step of where it gets enforced, is it gets enforced against Christian pastors who decline to perform gay marriages, who speak out and preach biblical truths on marriage, and that has been defined elsewhere as hate speech, as inconsistent with the enlightened view of government. And I think there is no doubt that the advocates who are driving this effort in the United States want to see us end up in that same place.
David, talk a little bit about those remarks. Do a lot of conservatives share that viewpoint?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. A lot of conservatives, and not just Ted Cruz, but Rand Paul, who was also on hand, as I mentioned before. We sat down with him as well. He echoed those same types of sentiments. Look, this is a problem that many conservatives feel is only going to get worse now that gay marriage seems to start to at least have left the station. A lot of people argue about that, but at least left the train station to a degree. And so, yeah, this is going to be something to focus on for sure in the coming years.
Well, it's only 2013, but many are already saying Ted Cruz has a lot of potential as the Republican nominee for 2016. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think he does. I think he's got a lot of potential. Why? Because he breaks the stereotype. He breaks the mold. I thought all these Tea Party Christian folks were maybe not as smart. Well, hold on. Ted Cruz, Ivy League educated, smart as a tack. He's totally flipped the argument on its ear.
All right. Thanks as usual, David.
On its head.
Don't forget, for all of David's exclusive political coverage, you can check out his blog, The Brody File, and you can find that on CBNNews.com.
Great interview. A large majority of Americans support religious freedom when it conflicts with gay rights. A new survey shows 85% believe a Christian wedding photographer has the right to refuse work at a gay wedding if it violates his or her religious beliefs. Only 8% disagreed. Rasmussen reports put the question to 1,000 people in a telephone survey.
Tea Party conservatives and liberal Democrats have come together to try to make changes to the National Security Agency's surveillance program. Some Republicans have strongly defended the program, saying it's important for national security. But the unusual coalition of conservatives and liberals has expressed serious concerns about the government's surveillance. It's part of the ongoing debate over privacy versus security. The House is also considering measures that would limit President Obama's ability for military action in Syria. Both issues are part of the latest bill on defense spending. A Southwest Airlines plane has been removed from a runway at LaGuardia Airport, and things are starting to return to normal with air travel across the country. The plane had a hard landing Monday when its nose gear collapsed. The flight from Nashville to New York was carrying 150 passengers. About 16 of them were injured in the accident. The FAA is investigating. Coming up, celebrating the royal birth, the reason why it's so important, and a reminder for Christians. The world got its first look at the Prince of Cambridge this afternoon. The proud new parents, William and Kate, made a very quick appearance for the public and media to get their first glimpse of the baby that will one day be king. Their appearance was brief, but both parents looked excited to show off their baby boy. Dale Hurd has more on the royal arrival.
It's been said that a king waits for no one. Baby Cambridge is only a day old and already people are coming to him. The first visitors arriving by taxi, Grandpa Michael and Grandma Carol Middleton. Afterward, Carol told the press her first grandson was beautiful.
Both doing really well, and we're so thrilled.
And next, the Duke and Duchess of Cornwall. Prince Charles walked up the very same steps that he walked out of in 1981.
May we see your son?
Charles and Diana introduced the world to William, and now 3 decades later, Great Britain has 3 kings in waiting. They celebrated the baby with a 62-gun salute and 3 hours of bells ringing. What will the little prince be named? Most people are betting on George or James, but they're also betting on everything.
I think our most interesting market at the moment is the baby's first word. You can get Dada or Mama, they're the favourites, but Your Majesty at 50 to 1 might be worth £1.
Father William is now officially on diaper duty. He begins 2 weeks of paternity leave from his job as a Royal Air Force rescue pilot. And outside their future palace today, the changing of the guard became congratulations for England's new prince. The baby boy will likely be the first king of the 21st century. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
And joining us now for some perspective on Britain's royal birth is 700 Club producer Sarah Kelly, who is from the United Kingdom. Sarah, lovely to have you on the show. And you are truly, we must tell our audience, a loyal subject. I mean, you have the paraphernalia to prove it, right?
My mother has made sure that I stay loyal to the crown. But no, I love the Queen. You can't have a conversation with me without saying God save the Queen.
And here's a plate that commemorates the wedding of William and Catherine. Talk about the influence of this. I mean, the royal birth. This is a big deal for you guys.
I think a huge part of it. I mean, a birth anytime is a joyful occasion. But when there's so much negative news, there's so much tension in the Middle East, all this stuff going on, to have a birth that it's just such a great celebration.
What does this little blue blood mean for the monarchy?
I just think at the moment, the monarchy is growing and thriving with the times.
Yeah.
They really are taking hold of how society is changing, and they are able to still serve. So this little boy, this little guy, he's growing up into just a family that is able to adapt to the times and just keep serving the people.
And talk about that, because this couple, William and Catherine and Kate, they really have not followed tradition per se. They've broken out of the mold, from the wedding to the way everything has just evolved around them.
I think that's marvellous, though, because they've been able to really, like I keep saying this word, serve. It's service.
Yeah.
And when you are in that position, it's service, and they've been able to serve the people. Apparently, it was 4 hours after the birth of the baby that they actually went public. They were taking care of their family and their friends, and I think Great Britain understands that they need their family time, they need that personable time, but then they're able to come and serve the people. Yeah,
it seems like every media outlet in the world has had its say on the royal birth. As somebody from across the pond, are you surprised at the wall-to-wall coverage here in the United States?
Well, no, because I think when the royal wedding happened, I got up the latest out of all of my friends, because I only got up at 5 a.m. Sure. Everybody else was up at 3. Yeah. It was shocking to me to see how everyone was in it, but I think we just love that whole sense of fairy tale, the sense of magic that it brings.
Do you think this particular couple will be sort of trendsetters as parents, and kind of breaking with royal tradition that that Charles and Diana followed. Talk about that.
Very much. They're very hands-on. And from what I understand, even they're moving into an apartment in Kensington Palace where they're going to be very much involved. I think also they've had a second nursery built at Catherine's mother's home.
Yeah.
So they're very much family-based. It's not going to be about a governess. It's not going to be about a nanny. It's going to be about them together.
Last few seconds, you told me off camera that it's important to pray for this little boy, but also for the royal family as a whole.
Absolutely. No matter, even though we say they haven't got that much autonomy, Her Majesty the Queen has had the ear of most world leaders since 1952. They have influence that we cannot possibly see.
Yeah.
And so we need to pray for the salvation of that family because they're the ones who are speaking into the president's ear, who's there for 8 years. They're there for the long haul.
Yeah. Sarah, thank you so much for your perspective.
You're welcome.
Lovely to have you on the show.
Thank you
today.
so much.
You're welcome.
Up next, after more than 15 years of digging, archaeologists may have made a discovery of biblical proportions. Hear what they found after this.
Hello? Is this thing on? Hey, kids, do you love games? And do you love discovering things? Well, do ya?
Then you're gonna love this. It's the new free Superbook Kids Bible app. You can play games, watch videos, find answers to your questions, and a whole lot more. The new Superbook Kids Bible app. Free downloads available on iTunes now.
And welcome back to NewsWatch. He healed the sick, raised the dead, and called fire down from heaven. The prophet Elisha is one of the great figures of the Bible.
But what was everyday life like during his lifetime? CBN News has this exclusive look at an archaeological site that tells us more about that era. And as Chris Mitchell reports, that site could even contain Elisha's house.
This is Tel Rehov in the Jordan Valley. During 16 years of digging, archaeologists uncovered a 3,000-year-old, well-planned city. They also found a unique building that might have been the house of Elisha.
The house was full with objects of unique type. 2 altars we found there, 2 pottery altars that were used for burning incense.
Lead archaeologist Ami Mazar also points out the difference in the structure of the house.
Normally houses have one entrance leading into a large space with rooms all around. This house was divided into 2 wings. The 2 wings were connected to one another through the back room. And each one of the wings had an opening towards the street.
Outside the room were incense altars, maybe used to make an offering to God, before entering to hear the prophet's message. During the excavation, archaeologists discovered this special room inside the house with a table and a bench inside. They also discovered a pottery shard with the name Elisha on it, dated to the 9th century. Which leads some to believe this was the room of the prophet Elisha.
We found an ink inscription written in red ink on pottery. It's broken, unfortunately, but we reconstruct the name as Elisha.
Elisha was born about 7 miles from Tel Rehov in Avel Mahola and went throughout the kingdom of Israel, from Jericho to Samaria to Shunam.
I cannot say for sure that this particular Elisha that we found is the biblical Elisha. You know, it's very difficult to say. But it's very tempting because it's exactly the period when Elisha acted, the second half of the 9th century BC.
Elisha, the prophet, was known for telling the widow to borrow empty pots, fill them with a tiny cruse of oil, and sell them to pay her creditors, raising the Shunammite son from the dead, and instructing the Syrian army commander Naaman to wash in the Jordan River 7 times to be healed of leprosy. Archaeologist Stephen Fawn calls the evidence compelling.
With only 6 other people by the name of Elisha known in that time for a couple of centuries on either side, we can somehow believe that either there was just the luck that this holy man was also by the name of Elisha, or this was Elisha the prophet himself.
Another discovery pointing to Elisha is the discovery of 2 different inscriptions mentioning the family of Nimshi.
Remember, it was Elijah that was told to anoint Jehu, the son of Nimshi, to be king. He passed that on to Elisha, who sent out one of his disciples to finally do the anointing.
Many archaeologists shy away from drawing conclusions about the Bible, but some see it as a way of putting the pieces together.
Archaeology is like a huge puzzle. We add information from one excavation, a second excavation, a third excavation, Chatzor, Megiddo, Tel Rehov, Bet She'an, Samaria, and together we bring it into a large picture, the large puzzle, trying to decipher the material culture of the Israelites.
For Carrie Summers, who heads Nazareth Village, it's even more.
It's like any other archaeological site, in essence, is every scoop of dirt proves the Bible one scoop at a time, and this site is absolutely magnificent.
The future of the site is uncertain because its mud bricks are deteriorating. Experts hope, however, it can be preserved to help future generations understand the Bible. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Tel Rehov, Israel.
Each year, about 3 million students take the SAT. For high schoolers, getting a perfect score on the test is rare. But what's even more rare is a middle schooler landing that coveted perfect 2400.
2400. Well, that's the case for Varun Jain, a 14-year-old boy from California who just graduated middle school. He took the test in June. His dad read the results online at 5:30 in the morning.
Well, I was actually asleep and my dad woke me up.
I was so ecstatic. I said, Varun, did you know that you have got a perfect score? And he said, wow, and then he went back to sleep.
Went back to sleep. Doing things with excellence is standard procedure for Varun. He has won academic awards, spelling bee contests, plays basketball and tennis, and he and his brother both play the sitar and will soon release a CD.
I guess there's always more to do, and I'm going to try to do more because it's always exciting to learn more and accomplish more.
Well, Varun starts high school this fall. He has his heart set on Harvard or MIT. That is one smart cookie. 2400. That's a smart boy.
And did you see all those trophies and other accomplishments?
Yeah, it's
he
like,
excels in every area.
Yeah, son, you got 2400. Oh, okay. Going back to sleep.
But the parents did not go to sleep.
Oh
Notice
my gosh.
that.
Very,
they were
very
pretty
proud of them.
excited.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Well, that's all the time we have for this edition of NewsWatch.
Remember, you can email us your comments and questions at newswatch@cbn.com. From all of us here in the studio, these camera guys back in the control room, Monique and Donna Russell, from all of us here at CBN News. Good night, everyone.
Have a great evening.